Testing 1 2 test.
Good morning, everybody. We are still waiting for a quorum, so it'll be just a few more minutes before we'll be able to start the meeting. All right, this will be the call to order. Good morning, members of the MAG 911 Oversight team. This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking so that those joining virtually can hear you. For those participating in the Zoom, please remember to unmute your device before speaking and mute when you are not speaking to create a positive experience for all attendees. When speaking, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. Phone participants should use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise their hand. The MAG public comment process provides opportunities for members of the public to comment on items scheduled on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. 2 opportunities are provided for public comment, including call to the audience and action items to be heard. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website prior to the meeting, as long as the comments are received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. If in person, would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card from the MAG staff. Please be sure to indicate the item for which you want to speak and give it to the designated MAG staff person. If you're parked in the garage, remember to validate your ticket. Parking validators are available in the information table. For those who purchase a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Please note that hearing assisted devices are available from the MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
Thank you, Chair. I will go through the list of members. Please make sure you're unmuted and indicate if you are present when I call your name. Phoenix Fire,
Here.
Scottsdale PD,
Here.
Buckeye PD,
Here.
Chandler PD.
Here.
Glendale Fire. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office,
Present.
Mesa Fire,
Here.
Peoria PD, Phoenix PD, Tempe PD. Is there anyone present that I didn't call? Chair Walker, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Liz. Our next item is a call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. Members of the public who are attending in person may deliver their comments at the front of the room. You have up to 3 minutes to complete your comments. At this time, I have received no speaker cards for any agenda items. Just confirming.
No, there are no cards we've received.
Are there any other members of the public here today who desire to speak on this item?
No,
And staff, we have no other written comments for this item.
no.
Right. Next on the agenda is the approval of the June 15th, 2022 911 Oversight Team meeting minutes. Does any member of the committee have any questions or discussion on this item? Prior to the approval of this item, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, I have received no requested speaker cards for this item. That is still accurate? Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the June 15, 2022 911 Oversight Team meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Chandler for the second.
Thank you. We have a motion from John Laughlin, Mesa Fire, and a second from Michelle Potts, Phoenix PD. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room? Those in room, please say in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
I have to go do a roll call.
Okay. Apologize. We're going to do a roll call vote on this.
Phoenix Fire,
Approved?
Scottsdale PD,
Approved.
Buckeye PD,
Approved.
Chandler PD,
Approve.
MCSO,
Point of clarification, am I able to vote on MCS? Okay, approved. Thank you.
Is there anyone I did not call? Oh, Mesa Fire, didn't I say Mesa? Mesa Fire.
Approved.
So the agenda item has passed, Chief Walker.
Motion passes. Thank you, Liz. Our next item is the administrator report. Liz Graber, 911 Administrator, will provide a report to the 911 Oversight Team on activities and programs managed by the Maricopa Region 911. Liz?
Thank you, Chief Walker. So here's the updates I give every month on the different systems that we have. Our SENS program, the Community Emergency Notification System, is year to date 130 launches. That's about average of where we're at. I'm sorry. That's year to date last year. Year to date now we're at 97. And I failed to put that on there. So last year we did 130 for 2021. As of August, the end of August, we were at 92, if my memory serves me correct. And that is on par with where we are average every year. So we're in the last 3 years, we've used the Community Emergency Notification System more than we ever have. I don't know if it's related to COVID or just the way times are. We still average more missing children and endangered adults as our notification, but more and more police action notifications are coming out as well. And we just reminder that this, every law enforcement agency and police agency has access to this in their PSAP to do notifications. It's phone-based, and we've had it around since 2005. A little history. Text to 911, our monthly average is 881 texts. Just to give you an idea of our monthly average of 911 calls, it runs in about 270,000. So texts have not caught up with voice calls, but they are growing every year. So year to date of 22, we have had 7,047 text sessions. When we say text sessions, that we don't count each text back and forth as a text. We talk, it's the conversation as a whole. The previous year at this time was 5,903. So you can see that significant growth. The Arizona Corporation Commission has been holding hearings on 911 concerns, outages, and NG 911 platforms. The next generation 911 migration that the state has as a project. In the last one they had a couple of weeks ago, I listened in on it, and there were concerns with the smaller carriers that are in the rural areas that provide telephone service, including 911 to rural areas, that with the change of next generation 911, where everything's being moved from old copper based into IP based telecom. In the valley, we don't struggle with that because we have networking everywhere. But in those rural areas, they don't have access to fiber connections, networking, and they were allowed through the National Emergency Number Association, NENA, standards to have the copper base was allowed still in, because they recognized that would need to have legacy connections. It all couldn't flip the switch and everybody be on IP. So they allowed that. And so to add to the drama, the FCC deregulated the copper, they call it TDM. And when they did that, that opens up the price to whatever and if you're wanting to get off it and you're a telephone company, the prices went very high. And so this is something that they're struggling with, because they'll only have like 900 customers in Arizona in these small areas. And so it'll have a financial impact on the company, which could also lead to financial impact to those paying that monthly bill. So that was a big struggle with that they talked about during that meeting. So in our area, we do have a few smaller carriers that give service, but for the most part, all of our carriers are prepared for it. And anyway, they're looking at, because there's no cost recovery for it, so they're trying to come up with a solution that will help the people that live up there, the residents, as well as being able to get them the best 911 service they can. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Liz. Does any member of the committee have a question on this item?
I apologize. I forgot one thing on text messaging. We were notified by the state of in our Psap managers meeting last month that alarm companies were going to begin to text through using text to 911 to do alarm alerts. So traditionally they call and the operator would answer and enter the call of whatever fire, police alarm. Then they came up with it's called Michelle, remind me, CAD. ASAP to PSAP. So alarm companies would be able to connect to the CAD systems and enter a call and would show up on the CAD. And that's been around for several years. Chandler is one of them that have it. But now the idea is that they will text the information to the PSAP through the text to 911 format. And so MCSO has started this, and I'm not sure who else. I think MCSO is the only one that's brought it on, and we've been dealing with misroutes. So their alarm information has gone to Chandler and to Glendale. And so it's trying to hone why those misroutes are happening. The alarm company should be able to pinpoint it because it's not like they're using a cell phone. They should be able to pinpoint exactly which Psap it should go to. So we're working with them. So that was just another reported item on text to 911.
Thank you, Liz. Now, are there any questions from the committee on this item?
You
I had
have a
one.
question.
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I had one, Liz, just so I clearly understand with the sends. The 130, was that last year's year total? Or
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
so that's last year's year total and the 92 is our year to date.
It's
correct?
year to date, end of August.
Okay, no, thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the alarm companies coming through text, we're measuring all text to 911 through this measurement. Have we talked about maybe separating these out since alarms are not quite 911 on how we're going to start measuring some of the workload between alarms? And I'm assuming that'd be agency specific, but if it goes region wide, I wonder if that discussion is happening.
Not that I'm aware of. So you would have to be able to filter those out, have some sort of mechanism to do that. So the platform at this point would not be able to do it, whether that's by phone number or probably the most accurate you're going to be able to do is review your text messages to see which ones are alarm companies and which ones are residents calling, texting.
Any other questions? I have one question regarding the now texting from the alarm companies, and you may not have this information, or if anybody does, please provide it. Is this an automated? So the alarm would trigger and it's automated, creates a text to then the Psap. Do we know if it's a completely automated process?
My understanding is that the alarm company sends it automated through text to 911. There's 3 different platforms that are out there right now, and none of them are coming text to 911 except, from what I understand, ADT. So, but I think they have a way to take the information manually and then send it by text to 911, whereas the other platforms are linked or integrated with a CAD solution or like a rapid SOS portal or something like that. So this one is a different format.
So and I think it's important to understand the mechanics of it. So the operator, the call taker is going to have to acknowledge that this text has come in and still has to type it in. So is it really saving time between voice and text is debatable. But where the ASAP to Psap solution, even though there's more networking that's required, creates a CAD case automatically. So it's easy for a dispatcher to get it, verify and send it out. So.
Thank you. And maybe not so much under the regional 911, but my concern would be if it was fully automated, we could generate an increase in calls to our Psap. So something maybe Psap managers better be aware of. If we see that, if the alarm company start doing that, completely automated, takes that human element from the alarm company out of screening that. And all of a sudden, in a time where we're seeing response and call volumes increase significantly, it could actually increase our workload. So just something to consider. Any other questions? Okay, this item is on the agenda for information only. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is for a budget review. Staff review the MAG FY 2024 Psap annual element funding request and FY 2024 through 2029 equipment program. Liz?
Thank you. So as a reminder, we do our annual budget, but we also do a forecast budget of 6 years with our 24 Psaps. And we ask them starting in April for anything that they would like to add, as in logging recorder reimbursements, additional positions that they might want, or if they're moving or remodeling. Those are the things that the Psap managers are responsible to report, so we can add those to our budget. So for fiscal year 2024, we have Wickenburg is due for an upgrade. Peoria PD is due for an upgrade. Gilbert PD is due for an upgrade. Avondale is due for an upgrade, and ASU. So those are our 5 agencies that we are upgrading this year. And then equipment and support is the peripheral things that we have set aside that we equipment that we need that goes beyond the project that my technicians need. Then we have what the Psaps requested is next in the green. Wickenburg requested 1 position. Tolleson requested 2 positions. Scottsdale requested 2 positions. Mesa Fire asked for 3 positions. Goodyear asked for 5 positions. Gilbert also requested a login recorder reimbursement, and Chandler PD asked for an additional position. Apache Junction is also requesting for a login recorder and 1 position. Next, under the Psap expenses, this is where our maintenance comes in. So the personnel that provide 24-hour, 7-day-a-week maintenance is a little over $1 million. Equipment and support that they need is and that also includes software support contracts on all the equipment. So we have annual support contracts with your 911 vendor, and that number is also included in there. And so that's $816,900. And then we have GIS mapping. Mapping is how 911 is basically run now, especially with NG 911 core services, where we're getting lat long information. So we have GIS personnel that also do that and our mapping and the things that they support, and that's at $356,450. And then our network, we have our own 911 network, and we have to pay monthly costs to service providers, and that comes in at $871,832. Our projects that are keeping our 911 network current is $624,000. Personnel that run the network is $734,450. And then equipment and support contracts, which is significant, is $1,072,912. And then we move down to admin. That's involves personnel that we use, any equipment, laptops, travel, anything comes out of that $163,990. So our total for fiscal year 2024 ask is $8,902,534. That's down from what we were last year. I'm sorry. And could we go to the next slide? So this is my sad attempt of a pie chart. So you can see what takes up our spots. So on the left, Psap upgrades, the blue. Psap requests for the new positions is the green. And then what it takes, the maintenance and support, those are all pointed at Psap expenses to support your centers. The Ezina is the lovely avocado color, and that's the carriers and making sure that our 911 network is up. So you can see our Psaps are our first priority, and our network as well. And 911 admin and GIS. Normally, if you can go back to the previous slide, Jeremy, thank you. Normally, we would be asking for a review of a vote on a recommendation of the budget. But in the Psap managers meeting on August 18th, they did not want to approve the budget without looking at a more detailed budget, a line item. They want to also review all the quotes for all those projects listed on there, as well as the line item of all personnel. So we're getting those together. We'll be presenting it first to the 911, the Psap working group with the budget committee. And then we will have to have an out of turn meeting, a special meeting called so that they can pass the budget. And as a result, we'll need to schedule another meeting with this group. If they pass the budget, then to give you the opportunity to look at it. But there won't be any action taken today on this budget. It was just for information only.
Just for information, Patrick Melvin, MCSO, you mentioned that the budget was down, the request was down from last year. What was, do you know, what's the difference, just out of curiosity?
Off the top of my head, our budget for this fiscal year we're working off is a little over 9 million. I think it's 9.2. The reason we have a high one every so often, just to give you an idea, is Phoenix PD. because they have 102 911 stations. And so when they are due for an upgrade, we usually stay about between 9 and 10 million. But every 6 years when Phoenix PD is on there, they spike and our costs go up that 1 year and then they go back down.
Michelle with Chandler. Can you tell me what the percentage of this 8.9 million is relative to the rest of the state or the total of the state?
I don't know what they've turned in. I usually won't get that kind of a number until they do the award letters and they give us all the other systems, what they received. I can tell you on this year, we received about 42% of the budget, overall budget of 23 million.
And do you know how much we're contributing to that for Maricopa region?
The state used to collect wireline and wireless counts of how many accounts there are and based it on that, but they've stopped doing it. So now we base it on population, which is very similar, and that's 62.3% at last count.
Okay, and I have another question as well. So the budget's on pause right now. Do we know how long that's going to be delayed and what the impact on the PSAPs will be? And then my next question would be, do we know why we're pausing it? Are we making recommendations on the budget? Are we just looking at it for purposes of transparency or?
So once the working group takes a look at it and goes through, then we'll hold the PSAP managers meeting for them to review it. They haven't indicated to me whether this is just so they, it's part of transparency, so they can see all the line, the details of everything behind those numbers, or if they're wanting to make decisions on changing some of the line items that you see there that they haven't indicated that. They just want to look at all the quotes. So I'm assuming they want to adjust projects and then all the line item personnel and everything, that who gets paid what on the team.
So I haven't seen that before. What would be the process if there's some recommendations? I mean, clearly we've deferred to you on the subject matter expertise when it comes to the technical component of that. So how would that work if we're going to make recommendations on a budget change? So it goes to the budget working group, and then where's the decision point on these changes? Is it just brought to PSAP managers and then here, or what would be the next steps on that?
Well, excuse me, if there were changes made on it that were the recommendations of the PSAP managers group as a whole and was voted on, then that budget would be presented to this committee to look at. And upon that approval, then that would continue up through the MAG process, through the management committee and regional council.
Liz, does that complete your report on the budget?
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Vice Chair.
I actually had one very similar to Michelle's. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I know we're looking at standing up a study group. If they come forward with recommendations for, say, addition of personnel, enhancement of the technology behind MR 911, how do we account for that? Is there a provision for that in this, or do we have to move with haste on that committee to come up with something before we submit to the state?
So to help you understand better what our budget timeline, the normal process is that we have the budget all approved through the MAG process by December 1st. The notice of funding for the grant comes out, and we are in the 1st of December, and we are given the date of December to start entering our grant, our budget, whatever the MAG approved budget is, gets entered into the grant system. And that closes by January, early January. So the risk we run on delaying it, or is that we miss the window of the grant. Now, the grant process has only been in for 3 years, and it's truly not a grant. They use it to help manage a state. When they presented it to us, said that it was to help manage the funds, but it is monies that are actually collected each month from your telephone bills. So that's the risk we're at. Would miss the grant window to apply. Would have to negotiate with the state whether or not that would be, there could be an extension, but that's not a decision that we get to make. So I suspect that the study committees, because there's a lot to cover. We'll get into that, but that will go beyond the grant window. So we will need to have a budget.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, if I could clarify, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, to your question regarding the role of study committee, we'll talk about that in the next item. That is not part of the budget process. So the study committee's role is much broader, kind of regional systems discussion regarding the development of the plan that we currently exist in. I'll talk about this more in the next item. That is outside of the normal budgetary process where it starts with the Psap managers, comes to this committee, as Liz pointed out, rolls up to the management committee comprised of city managers and similar, all up to our board, which is the regional council, which are mayors and similar.
Thank you for that. I'm just thinking along the lines of should the group presents or come up with a solution or any kind of proposal that has fiscal implication. Are we going to have to wait to the next grant or budget cycles? I guess is what I'm moving toward, but should that even occur?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee, I've been at MAG since 2007. This is a new one in terms of not hitting our kind of targeted goals in terms of our meeting processes at the end of the calendar year, looking at future fiscal years. To Liz's point, hopefully this is just an issue regarding just more transparency behind these numbers. Let's talk it out at the Psap managers, hopefully answer those questions and then move this budget forward. I would hate to see for our region to be potentially in jeopardy, missing a deadline to submit with the state.
If I could add, Vice Chair, I believe I understand what your question. I think that once the study committee basically outlines the future where we are going to go, those would be in future budgets. I don't think it would be since that in this budget that would be impacted. I don't think we have time for that, but it would be potentially a budget impact in the future. I do have a few questions on this as well. And Liz, what is our deadline to deliver a budget to the state for MR91?
So over the last few years, since they started the grant process, it kind of moves. So I can't give you a firm date, but it's been moved up. It used to be January would open up and we had till February to get it entered. But this last year they went earlier and started in December. So I'm hoping that they keep that those timelines and it doesn't get moved up, any sooner than that, because then we really will be in a crunch.
So I think it's important as the 911 oversight team and our responsibility to ensure that delivering 911 call routing throughout our region is maintained, that we do not allow ourselves to not meet that deadline to the state, and we anticipate in early December is something. So we make a recommendation. Ultimately, we don't approve. It's like the Psap managers make a recommendation to us. I believe that they could recommend not move forward, but I believe we could recommend it move forward and based on our opinion. So I think we need to be very aware of the timelines, obviously, because this was information only. It's going to have to be, we're going to have to schedule a meeting to have a vote on this, but we need to make sure and charge Liz, you and your team to make sure that we have meetings scheduled so that this team can make a recommendation or not, but move something forward to the ultimate authority that will approve a budget to go to the state. Ultimately, I think it's our responsibility to ensure that the 911 system is not impacted in our region, and we need to be able to make a recommendation. So certainly Psap managers can have answered their questions in process, and hopefully they can, whatever they're looking for and need, they can feel comfortable making a recommendation, but we need to be prepared and have a meeting scheduled so that we can have enough time to make that recommendation. So thank you. Joe?
So another piece of this that I think didn't happen at the Psap managers was a discussion on the Psap request. So I think last year we had a good discussion on some of the Psap requests, and the state came down with a recommended formula. Do we know if that formula is hard and fast formula? Basically, the state suggested a seat to call volume ratio, and then anything above, the midpoint threshold would likely be approved. And so looking at these, I think some of these Psap requests were not above that threshold. And if I recall, at least one, maybe two of these were denied last year. So is this going to be something that we're going to need to get into, to your point, Chief Walker, how these Psap requests are going to be approved or not approved, even within the MAG region?
So the state implemented the fiscal year 23, our current year, where they took the total number of 911 calls in the state and factored in how many consoles, 911 call answering stations there are throughout the state, and did the approximate of how many calls, what that average is for all, if you take those two numbers. And I believe it was, I want to say 2,700. And then maybe that's the first one, but that's what they were at. And anyone that had below that would not qualify for additional positions. Anyone that's above that would qualify for additional positions. So in the case of fiscal year 2023, Mesa PD was able to get additional positions, but Goodyear had put in for 5 positions. Gilbert had put in for 5 positions this fiscal year and did not get those because they fall below. Gilbert has decided to self-fund their 5 positions that the town of Gilbert will pay for. Goodyear is asking again, and their numbers still don't meet, but that, that's the state is the one that determines that.
So I thought last year we had some discussion on whether we were going to move it forward as a region. Are we going to do that again this year? And again, if it comes to this committee, is that something we need to share some of that formula or those numbers within this committee?
That's a good point, Ms. Potts. We can take the formula, and it was much more complex than what the state did because it factored in the size of the Psap. Because on the state, as easy as it was, if you're a small Psap and your call volume was doubled, you're still not qualified, but your operators are working twice as hard. So there's some discussion on that, and also all the emergencies that are handled not by a 911 call that come in on other methods. So there's a lot of things that they factored in. So I can get with the working group, the governance working group who came up with that formula, and do a comparison of what our approval process was compared to what it is on the state.
Any other questions on this item? Seeing none, this item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. So we will move on. Our next item is an update on the 911 Study Committee. Liz Graber will provide this report.
So the 911 Study Committee as a background was formed in 2016. And at that time, the state 911 office was wanting the state as a whole to go to a 911 as a service, meaning it was in the cloud, and it was being offered by, at that time, CenturyLink, and they called it managed services. And because of our MAC process, and that we look at things through governance with the Psap managers, your committee, and MAG Regional Council and Management Committee, we needed to look at it more formally. So MAG put together a 911 study committee that was chaired by the city managers of Mesa and Glendale. They had the chair and vice chair of this committee, the chair and vice chair of the Psap managers committee. They had the chair of the MAG technical group on there, and then various police agencies throughout the valley to represent that. And then that's who we worked with, along with the consultant that MAG hired that helped us develop our vision for what we need in the region for 911. That we worked on it with the study committee. We came up with the final version. Once that occurred, we presented the plan up through the MAG process. And in June of 2017, the regional council gave the final approval. And that's what and my team have been working on implementing 911. So the things that were in there is what we work on every day to move forward. And go to the next slide. A lot of writing, but I wanted to give you an idea of, and I can send out a link to the regional plan, the strategic plan, so you can have a copy of it. It's a good study. But we looked at 5 areas: NG 911 networking, NG 911 GIS, and NG 911 CPE. You can see when we put NG, that's next generation. Our focus is getting 911, or has been getting 911 on the best platform. So in the strategic plan, we had objectives for these. And so on the 911, you can read there, enhance the quality. I'll just read the first part. Enhance the quality of the regional 911 system by providing reliable, secure, redundant, diverse 911 system. I think that opening statement says it all. With the way 911, the way networking is, and the things and the bells and whistles that come through IP now, you can do a lot of things, but does it meet that first thing? Is it going to cause security issues with the 911 network? Because that's the one thing we don't want to lose, is the 911 network, because then no calls are going into the Psaps. And one of the things that we found with managed services is that you putting all your eggs in one basket. We found that the diversity didn't meet what our levels were as to by reliable and secure and redundancy. And so those that did choose other areas in the state did struggle having all their 911 calls go down because of the managed services, because in the cloud. So that's something that you have to keep in mind, is you need something that is planned better. So our team has been working on redundancy and different areas. We do want to bring in this part of the task that we have. We do want to bring a Network Center 3 in as a cloud base. So we have local and cloud. So if there's an issue in a disaster locally that takes some of our equipment down, we have a cloud acting as a backup. Or if there's a problem with the cloud, we have local that is taking over. So it's that diverse look at it. And G911, one of the big things that are going to change, and this was an FCC regulation, is when you call 911 now, they look at the tower and then they triangulate and where in the sector are you calling. And so it delivers it for the most part to the right Psap, but if you're on the border, like Tempe, Mesa, it will route to whoever that owns that sector. And if it's actually in Tempe and Mesa has a sector, then they have to transfer it. And G911 is going more of the device location. It gives a whole bunch of additional data that allows the companies to route the system more accurately and not by the cell tower and sectors. And so preparing the GIS data to get ready for that was another of our goals. CPE, that's the telephone network, the telephone equipment that we use for call answering. We wanted to make sure that when we went to NG911 that it would be ready. And our equipment, we have 3 different vendors in our region. And so that's why it's not all one vendor. So we have to make sure each of those vendors meet the needs we have. And so our group has gone through and made sure that all of them can accept NG911 related data. And if you go to the next slide. NG 911 governance. So we have a working group that does governance, and we looked at, as we talked about earlier, the formula of budgeting, additional positions. They came up with prioritizing budget priorities. We voted that governance in. They voted in the support of and we've successfully passed support of the NINA standard of answering 911 calls within those standards. So they're working on making sure our governance matching where we are at today. And then the other thing was 911 funding. And this continues to be something that's in process. We haven't made any, the collection of 911 funds monthly has not changed. And we haven't been able to lock in a process with the state of Arizona to make sure our funds that we receive are consistent and that the funding source is stable. I can tell you that the state collected approximately 18 million last year, and the budget that the state put out statewide was 22 million. So but they do have like a rainy day fund overages in their funding, because those don't automatically get rolled into the general budget. They roll over year after year. So there is a surplus in there. But so we can spend more than that we take in, but eventually that's going to end and we'll have to come up with a more secure funding source. And so those are the highlights. And the 911 study committee will develop, and those are the ones we'll look at again and maybe add more. So we were able to do a lot of the things in our strategic plan. There are some things we still need to do, and there's plenty more we want to add because technology is changing so quickly. We want to make sure that 911 stays up with it. But if you can go back to that slide, Jeremiah. But we always remember we have to make sure it's a reliable, secure, redundant, and diverse 911 system so that we don't lose 911 and become in the news. So the strategic, the 911 study group will open this up, and we will provide reports to them. And with that group, we'll help revise the strategic plan. And then once that's complete, then we will have an opportunity to present it to Psap managers and to this group as well for your input on what the vision is and comments and anything that you see that you feel that we need to take the direction in. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Liz. Are there any questions or comments from the membership?
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Yes.
just a few more clarifying points on that presentation. So as Liz pointed out, in 2016, the study committee was formed. She listed that composition. Some of that, almost all that composition has changed except for the city managers of Glendale and Mesa. So we'll work on reconvening that committee. That committee was, our study committee was created by the city managers, by the management committee. So I think it's appropriate that they take action to reconvene that committee with the new composition of membership. So just put that of note. Also in 2016, as was noted, the region was presented an opportunity, if you will, and it was regarding CenturyLink and the managed services approach, which was some of the impetus in triggering a study committee to review that opportunity, what was being presented in managed services compared to what we have had with Maricopa Region 911. Obviously, the region did pursue staying with Maricopa Region 911 administration, developed a 7-year plan. So we are in year 6 of that 7-year plan. So it probably warrants a look by the study committee as to a status report as to how that's been going, and then look ahead to what we're going to do next. I think it comes as no surprise to anyone at this table or among the PSAP managers that the region again is being approached with the 911 services approach once again. So this is another opportunity to check in and review what is being presented to the region versus what we have with our regional 911 system. And again, what the region wants to do in terms of moving forward. So this is a great check-in opportunity. We will be looking forward to having those conversations with you all. There was a lengthy conversation, a briefing with government relations staff last week. A lot of questions were asked of Liz and trying to understand where we're at today with Regional 911. I guess good news is we've made our deadlines in terms of budget submittals over recent years, but we've had turnover among this committee composition, our PSAP managers, our government relations staff, and even our city managers. So I think that extensive briefing with government relations staff, it was offered up then that even city managers, perhaps in a workshop session, also get something of a primer, a 101 about regional 911, the processes here at MAG, just kind of a comprehensive view. So our member agencies are better able to address issues as they do arise. So a lot is going on in the background as we kind of ramp up for these more regional conversations. And I think this committee is going to play an important role in that. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Are there any questions from the committee or membership on this item? Hearing none, I just have one question. And Liz, if you could confirm, would it be accurate to say that this 911 study committee, the goal or intent will be to be as a MAG region that have PSAPs to come together to collaborate on what the future of MR 911 looks like, where we want to go as a region as far as delivering this service. And I agree that the first line and the first bullet on the current strategic plan should be our foundation. But would that be a good assessment that we will all work together to determine how we move forward, which then will be how you drive your MR 911 section group to deliver service to this region? Would that be an accurate assessment?
That's correct. So like I said earlier, there's all sorts of options beyond what we had in 2016-17. So we want to look at each of those, whether it's call handling as a service, on-prem, a hybrid, all the things that are available to us, and what would be the best for the region. So that discussion that would be whatever that committee comes up with, the study committee then, and once that gets approved by MAG, that's our marching orders, whatever that holds in there. So we agree to work whatever is determined by the regional council.
Thank you. But this item is on the agenda for information and discussion only, so we will move on. For our next item, staff report on the NG 911 Core Services Project. Liz?
So as I reported in earlier meetings, we have the next generation core services, and at a really high level, without getting too technical, 911 core services, NG 911, allows for a 911 call to have more data attached to it so it can route with more accuracy. Back in the 80s, when they started 911, it was all easy. Nobody had cell phones. We had residentials, and that's exactly how the calls would route according to the address and the emergency service number, the ESN number. But technology caught up with us, and cell phones are now 85% of the 911 calls we take. So the FCC determined with the wireless carriers that they had to provide a more accurate way of routing calls. In 2004 or 5 is when we went to 2005, we went to phase 2, where it routes by the cell sector, what we have today. And that still leaves a margin of error and time delays by transferring it to agencies. So that the FCC said, they've got to tighten that up. And so core services is with all that additional data. To give you kind of an idea, right now, when we take a call for those that have freeways that run in through through your agencies, it would, when we get a call of an accident on the freeway, it goes to the Phoenix, Mesa, whoever has that freeway in their city, Chandler. But this would be able to pinpoint it where it could be set up that it would show it's actually on the freeway, and it will be routed automatically to DPS, and they become a primary at that point. So it's that kind of changes that could impact the PSAPs as their call volume, if to not be able to have to transfer all the calls to DPS, they could get them directly on anything that's on the freeway. So that's an example of the things we're looking forward to. So we were able to start this project. We got the equipment. The state, as a reminder, the state has granted one network for everybody in the state except for the Maricopa region. And the Maricopa region, since we have our own networking system, was allowed to keep that, with the idea that eventually, after we get the systems going and the dust settles, then to start working as partners on disaster recovery, so that if there was an outage where their system, their 911 network is not working, instead of calls going to a black hole, they're actually can be managed over on the other 911 network and vice versa. So we have that disaster recovery, and that's going to take a lot of governance and planning when we get to that point. But that's the idea on looking forward to the future of being able to do that. So we have the equipment, the upgraded equipment. We have Mike Benjamin, our technical manager, and his team have worked with Comtech, the vendor, very hard this last month on getting it installed and tested, August and this month. And we started because of the earlier discussion on the deregulated TDM, some of our, even though we're not getting NG 911 core services data, we had to get it off of that old school network because of the cost. So we have been, since Tuesday, been getting calls IP. It doesn't have all the additional data yet. That's the next phase that we hope to have that by January. But we do see IP related calls coming through our 911 system every day from multiple providers. So we're very excited about that and ready to get started on the next phase where the data will come with it, and the PSAPs will see the results of more accurate 911 delivery. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the membership? All right, seeing none, this item is on the agenda for information and discussion only, so we will move on. Our next item is requests for any future agenda items. Are there any requests from the membership for an item on a future agenda? I have one. Liz, I would like to request a report on 911 outages across the state of Arizona over the last 5 years, including obviously Maricopa Regional 911, just to get an assessment, I think, with this upcoming public safety or public meeting to develop an extra strategic plan. I think it'd be a good idea to how outages are impacting the state. So I'd like to have a report on outages under areas that MR91 manages, and then across the regions, how they're broke down across the state.
So we'd be happy to provide that, but I want to make sure we understand what we're saying 911 outage is, because how the phone companies determine 911, what they deem a 911 outage is not necessarily, or we determine that 911 outage, they don't. So an example is if Michelle's Psap is stops getting calls, 911 calls, they then route to Tempe. And they don't consider that an outage because Tempe's answering the call. So we have to be able to kind of factor that in so we can try to break it down to what were true outages and what ones were what we consider an outage.
Okay, best with technology or information or data available. Where a system is down that's not able to route a 911 call is really what I was thinking, and looking for something more along that line, because it can be a compensation made to deliver it. If the system was out, it's more of a system outage is what I'm thinking and looking for, just to give us a better perspective, I think, on the state as a whole. Any other future items from the membership? All right. Are there any comments or announcements from the membership? All right, seeing none. With no further business, today's meeting is adjourned. Thank you.